The Abandoned Asylum, Part 1. Have you ever seen a building so dark, so broken, that even in daylight it looks like it's holding its breath? That's the asylum I'm going to tell you about tonight. It was built in the early 1900s, hidden deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. They said it was a place for the mentally ill, but back then, treatment was closer to torture. Patients were locked away, experimented on, and left to rot in silence. By the 1970s, it was shut down, officially because of budget cuts, but everyone in town whispered about the real. That's where our story begins, with 4 friends, young and stupid, who thought it would be fun to sneak inside. Their names: Ethan, Rachel, Mark, and Jess, all in their 20s, armed with flashlights, cameras, and the kind of arrogance that only comes when you think the world can't touch you. "Come on, it's just an old building," Ethan said, kicking through the tall grass as they approached. "We'll film a video, get some views, maybe even go viral." Rachel shivered, hugging her jacket tighter. "I don't like this. It feels wrong, like the air is heavier here." Jess laughed, brushing long hair out of her eyes. "That's just your imagination. This'll be fun. Besides, don't you want to see if the stories are true?" And then there was Mark. Rachel muttered, "Famous last words," but she followed anyway. Inside, the air was colder, 10 degrees colder, like stepping into a fridge. Their breaths came out in little clouds, and the smell, God, the smell, mold, rot, something sour that clung to the back of their throats. Their flashlights swept across long hallways, lined with peeling paint and rusted gurneys. Wheelchairs sat abandoned, one tipped over in the corner. On the walls, graffiti covered the old signs, but beneath the spray paint, you could still make out the faded words: Ward A, intensive care, electroshock therapy. Jess laughed nervously. "Creepy, but not too bad. Where do we start?" Ethan grinned, pulling out his phone to record. "Everywhere. The internet's gonna love this." But Mark wasn't smiling. He was staring at the end of the hall, where the shadows seemed thicker, darker, almost like they were moving. "Did you guys see that?" he whispered. Rachel turned. "See what?" But the shadow was gone. They moved deeper. Jess forced a laugh. "Probably just an animal, raccoon or something." But they all knew it hadn't sounded like an animal. It had sounded human. They pressed on, though Rachel's hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold her flashlight. They climbed a staircase, their lights bouncing off rusted railings and cracked steps. The second floor felt worse, the air thicker, the darkness heavier. And then they heard it. A laugh. Soft, distant, echoing down the hall. The problem? It wasn't just any laugh. It was Rachel's laugh. The exact same sound she'd made earlier when Jess teased her. But Rachel hadn't laughed this time. Her face went white. That was me." Mark swallowed hard. "No, that was something imitating you." And that's when they realized the asylum wasn't empty. It had been waiting.
Jess forced a laugh. Probably just an animal, raccoon or something. But they all knew it hadn't sounded like an animal. It had sounded human. They pressed on, though Rachel's hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold her flashlight. They climbed a staircase, their lights bouncing off rusted railings and cracked steps. The second floor felt worse, the air thicker, the darkness heavier. And then they heard it. A laugh. Soft, distant, echoing down the hall. The problem? It wasn't just any laugh. It was Rachel's laugh. The exact same sound she'd made earlier when Jess teased her. But Rachel hadn't laughed this time. Her face went white. That was me. Mark swallowed hard. No, that was something imitating you. And that's when they realized the asylum wasn't empty. It had been waiting. She screamed, stumbling back into Jess's arms. "Do you see that? Tell me you see that!" Jess's mouth hung open. I see it." And then the whispering began. At first it was soft, 100 voices murmuring under their breaths, overlapping, impossible to understand. But as the four of them huddled together, the whispers grew louder, clearer. "Join us. Lie down. It's time to rest." Mark's face went pale. "They think we're patients." The whispers rose into moans, then wails. The beds rattled, shaking violently. Rust flakes rained from the ceiling. The air grew colder, so cold their skin burned with it. Ethan finally dropped his phone. "We have to get out of here!" They ran again, crashing through another hallway, their flashlights jerking wildly. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching across the walls, reaching for them. Doors slammed shut as they passed, one after another, the sound chasing them down the corridor. Rachel cried out, "It's trying to trap us!" They stumbled into a stairwell, panting. Ethan pushed the door shut behind them, his hands shaking so hard he could barely hold it closed. Okay, we just... Asylum, Part 3. You ever hear your own voice coming from somewhere else? That's what froze them in that lobby. From the shadows, their laughter echoed back. Rachel's nervous giggle, Jess's sarcastic chuckle, Ethan's cocky laugh, Mark's low mutter, all of them overlapping, bouncing around the room like a twisted chorus. Rachel's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, covering her ears. "Stop! Stop it!" Jess grabbed her arm, trying to pull her up. "It's not real! It's not—" But the shadows disagreed. From the far corner of the lobby, something began to peel itself from the darkness. At first it looked like smoke, black and shifting, clinging to the walls. Then it shaped itself. Arms, legs, a head. A body that looked almost human, except its face was nothing but a blank void, a hole where features should have been. The laughter grew louder, now pouring from that empty face. Mark stepped back, shaking his head. No, this isn't possible." The thing tilted its head at him, like it was studying him. Then, with jerking, broken movements, it began to walk. Each step made the floorboards groan. Each step pulled the air tighter, colder. Jess screamed, "Run!" They bolted down another corridor, flashlights swinging wildly. The walls seemed to bend and stretch as they ran, the hallways twisting in directions that shouldn't exist. Left, right, down another flight of stairs, they backed against the wall, hearts racing, when Ethan spotted another door and shoved it open. They tumbled through into another hallway, slamming the door behind them. For a moment, silence, just their panting breaths. Then, from the other side of the door, scratching again, long, slow, this time carving into the wood. They watched in horror as words began to appear on the inside of the door, scratched from the other side. "You belong to us," Jess sobbed. "We're never getting out of here." Ethan snapped, trying to hold the group together. "Shut up! Stop saying that! We just have to keep moving." But Mark wasn't listening. His eyes were distant, staring down the hall. "Don't you feel it? The asylum doesn't want us to leave. It's shifting, keeping us here, like we've always been here." Rachel grabbed him. "Stop! Don't say that! We're not part of this place!" But the asylum disagreed. The lights on their flashlights flickered, one by one, first Jess's, then Ethan's, then Rachel's. Darkness swallowed them. Only Mark's light stayed on, and in its pale beam they saw movement. Dozens of shapes in the hall, not just one shadow figure, hundreds, all peeling themselves off the walls, all faceless, all whispering in unison, "Stay with us, stay forever." The friends clutched each other, terror choking them. Rachel whispered, "Why us? Why now?" And from the crowd of shadows, one stepped forward, taller than the rest. Its blank face leaned close to the flashlight, and then it spoke. Not a whisper, not an echo, a voice, low, cold, certain. "Because you came back," he whispered. "We're not intruders, we're patients. The asylum thinks we belong here." Rachel shook her head violently. "No, no, that's not true!" But even as she spoke, the sound of rolling wheels echoed down the corridor. A gurney, coming closer. The squeak of rusted wheels, slow and steady. Ethan swung his flashlight toward the sound and saw it. A hospital gurney rolled down the hall on its own. Strapped to it was a figure thrashing violently, its face obscured by bandages. The straps creaked as it fought to escape, its muffled screams breaking through the cloth. Jess shrieked, "Oh my God, help it!" But as the gurney drew closer, they saw its skin. Gray, rotting, eyes hollow. The bandaged figure was no patient. It was something else, something dead. The gurney slammed into the wall, tipping over. The figure crawled out, limbs bending wrong, joints cracking like dry wood. It hissed, a wet, broken sound, and lunged. Chaos erupted. Ethan swung a broken chair leg, smashing it across the creature's head. It shrieked, but didn't fall. Jess dragged Rachel back, while Mark kicked the gurney to block its path. Finally, Ethan's blows forced it to collapse in a heap of twitching limbs. But even as it lay there, it smiled. Its lips split wide, far too wide. And then it whispered, in Rachel's voice, "Stay." Rachel screamed, cover. Part 5. The shadows didn't just move, they waited. They crowded the edges of the office, pressing in, whispering, laughing, hissing. Every breath the four friends took seemed stolen by the building itself. Rachel was the first to move. She backed toward the filing cabinets, trying to find another exit, but the walls, they weren't where they remembered. Hallways had twisted into impossible angles, doors appearing where there had been only walls. Panic gripped her chest. "Boys!" she screamed. "There's a door! Over here!" Jess grabbed her hand, but it slipped right through Rachel's fingers, as if the shadows themselves had pushed her. She tumbled forward into a narrow corridor that had not existed before. Mark and Ethan ran after her, but the corridor stretched impossibly long. Their lights barely penetrated the darkness. Then Rachel's scream cut the air. Ethan spun around, searching for her. He saw her figure vanish into the darkness, as if swallowed by it. "No, Rachel!" Mark shouted, running after her. But the hallway was different now. Every turn seemed to loop back on itself. Each wall lined with patient files, thousands of them, their names etched in blood-red ink. Whispers floated through the air, calling each of them by name, promising comfort, peace, death. And then it came, the first touch, cold, wet, like icy fingers dragging down Ethan's back. He turned, swinging at nothing. The shadow recoiled into the darkness, melting away, but he could feel its gaze boring into him. "Don't stop moving!" Mark yelled. "Keep moving!" They ran through a labyrinth of corridors that seemed endless. Every room they entered was worse than the last. One room was filled with mirrors, but their reflections were wrong. Faces distorted, screaming silently, eyes hollow. Another room had beds stacked floor to ceiling, with figures crawling inside, muttering incoherent prayers. Jess screamed as she saw one of the figures reach toward her through the bed rails, skin peeling, teeth bared. She kicked at it and ran, but the shadow's laughter followed, closer, louder, filling her ears. And then it happened. Rachel's scream echoed again, this time final. Ethan skidded to a halt at a dead end. Rachel was pinned against the wall by invisible hands. The shadows had her, dragging her into the plaster, her face contorted with terror. The asylum wasn't just a building. By now, Ethan and Mark realized it was a predator. Every corner, every shadow, every whisper was part of it. They stumbled into what looked like the main hall, larger than anything they had seen before. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, plaster peeling in huge chunks, the floor littered with broken chairs and papers. At the center of the hall stood a figure. Taller than the tallest man, hunched slightly, its limbs twisted in unnatural angles. Its face, blank, but somehow the darkness of it seemed infinite, pulling at the edges of their vision. This must be it," Mark whispered. "The one controlling everything." Ethan swallowed hard. The patient zero?" The figure stepped forward, and the whispers swelled to a deafening roar. They spoke in hundreds of voices, but all with one message. "Join us forever." The figure raised a hand, and then the shadows around the hall surged, forming walls of black smoke, writhing like living things. Ethan and Mark felt their limbs grow heavy, their hearts pound faster. Every step toward the door seemed to stretch farther. "This way," Ethan shouted, pointing to a door at the far end. They ran, but the shadows blocked them, slamming against them like waves.
Mark swung a metal pipe from the debris, cutting through a tendril of darkness, but for every shadow destroyed, two more appeared. Patient Zero's voice boomed now. "You were meant to stay." Mark stumbled. Ethan grabbed him, pulling him up. "We're not staying. We fight." But what could they fight? Their hands hit air. Objects collapsed under the pressure of the darkness. The shadows were everywhere. Suddenly, Mark remembered the files they had seen, the one labeled "Integration Successful." He realized the asylum didn't just trap people. It consumed their minds, their souls, turned them into extensions of itself. Ethan turned his flashlight toward Patient Zero. For a moment, in the pale days passed, Ethan and Mark tried to return to normal life, but nothing was normal anymore. Every shadow, every whisper, every creak of a floorboard reminded them of the asylum. They thought they were free, but the marking under their nails burned constantly, a cold reminder of the darkness inside. One night, Ethan woke to a whisper at his ear, soft, familiar, yet hollow. "We're waiting." He sat up, heart hammering. The room was dark, too dark. Shadows stretched across the walls unnaturally, moving of their own accord. Mark called his phone. No answer. And then the shadows formed in his bedroom, reaching out. Shapes of Rachel and Jess, faceless, hollow eyes staring at him, smiling. They spoke together, in unison. "We belong to you." Have you ever inherited something and realized too late that it wasn't just an object? It started with a house, an old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by overgrown gardens and wrought iron fences that had rusted with age. The kind of house that looks like it's alive, breathing under the weight of time. The family who inherited it, Tom, his wife Claire, and their daughter Lily, didn't know much about it. A distant relative had died without heirs, and the house came to them as part of the will. "Looks, cozy," Tom said, trying to sound cheerful as they pulled up the gravel driveway. The house towered above them, windows dark, shutters hanging crookedly. The paint was peeling in long strips, revealing the gray wood underneath. Claire shivered. "Cozy?" she repeated. "It looks abandoned. Are you sure this is safe?" Tom laughed nervously. "It's ours now. We can fix it up. Besides, how bad can it be?" Lily, their 8-year-old, ran ahead, disappearing up the steps. "I want to see my room," she called. The first night was unsettling. The house creaked and groaned as if sighing with relief or warning. Every step they took echoed through the empty halls. They set up their things in the rooms, and Claire noticed something strange. Dozens of porcelain dolls lined the shelves, tables, even. But that day, Lily came running, holding a doll she hadn't seen before. Its porcelain face was perfect, its eyes too dark, too real. On the bottom, a tiny engraved signature. H. Dollmaker. "Look, Mommy, she's my friend." Claire frowned. "Where did you find that?" Lily shrugged. "It was in my room this morning."
Tom's brow furrowed. "I didn't bring that in, did you?" "No," Lily said. That night, things got worse. That night, Claire lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening. The house was alive with creaks and whispers, but something was different. A soft scratching sound came from Lily's room. She got up, heart pounding, flashlight in hand. The hallway was empty, silent except for that soft scratching. She approached Lily's door. "Lily?" she whispered. No answer. She opened the door slowly and froze. The room was filled with dolls, not on the shelves anymore. They were arranged in a perfect circle around the bed, facing inward. And in the center, Lily was asleep, clutching the new doll, the one engraved H. Dollmaker. Claire stepped closer. "Sweetheart, wake up!" The doll's head turned slightly, its eyes glinting in the flashlight beam. Claire gasped. It was impossible. Dolls didn't move. A low, almost imperceptible whisper came from the doll. "Play with us." On the bottom, a tiny engraved signature, H. Dollmaker. A low, almost imperceptible whisper came from the doll. "Play with us." Claire stumbled back, her hand over her mouth. The whisper was faint, but unmistakable. Lily stirred and muttered in her sleep, "I want to play. Don't be sad." The next morning, Tom found the dolls in the kitchen. Cups of tea were set in front of them, chairs pulled out as if someone had been sitting there. He laughed nervously. "Okay, that's enough. Lily, did you do this?" "No," she protested. "I didn't touch them." Claire's unease grew. That afternoon, she found Lily's room completely rearranged. The dolls were in new positions, each facing the corner, as if waiting for someone or something. That night, the whispers returned. This time, dozens of tiny voices, overlapping, chanting slowly. "Play with us. Stay with us. Forever." Claire couldn't sleep. She watched Lily. The child's eyes were open, staring straight ahead. She wasn't breathing normally. Suddenly, the doll in Lily's arms moved. It climbed off her lap, tiny joints creaking, porcelain hands reaching out. Claire screamed, lunging forward, but the doll stopped, frozen mid-air. Then another moved, and another. From the shelves, all the dolls began to descend, moving in unnatural, jerky motions toward the bed. They surrounded Lily, forming a circle. Claire tried to grab her daughter, but the dolls shifted, blocking her path. Their little faces were blank, smiles too wide, eyes dark and hollow. The whispering grew louder, filling the room. "Join us forever." Tom ran in, wielding a metal rod. "Get away from her!" But the dolls didn't stop. They lunged, fast now, moving impossibly, their tiny feet hitting the floor with unnatural force. One jumped onto Tom, cutting his arm with porcelain fingers. He yelped and threw it across the room, but two more replaced it instantly. Claire screamed, realizing the truth. The dolls weren't toys. They were alive. From somewhere deep in the house, a faint melody began, a music box tune, warped, slow, and sinister. It echoed down the halls, pulling the dolls toward it. They moved as one, carrying Lily with them. "No, Lily!" Claire cried, chasing them. They reached a hidden room behind a false wall in the study, a room she hadn't seen before. Inside, a small workshop
was lit by candlelight. Jars of eyes, hands, and hair lined the shelves. In the center, an enormous doll sat in a chair, its face blank, hands folded. Behind it, an old man hunched over a workbench, his back to them, but they could feel the malevolence radiating off him. "H. Dollmaker," Claire whispered, realization dawning. He turned slowly, eyes black, smile thin and cruel. "Ah, visitors, how nice." The dolls dropped Lily gently on the floor. She looked up at him, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "Your child," he said softly. "She sees what we see now. She belongs with us." Claire's heart pounded. "Take her back. She's a child." He chuckled. "She was never just a child. She's the next in line." Suddenly, the dolls swarmed around him, kneeling, bowing, as if awaiting orders. The music box tune grew louder, filling the room, vibrating through the walls. Claire lunged, grabbing Lily and trying to run, but the doors slammed shut. Invisible force pressed against them, pushing them back. Tom joined her, trying to break the door, but it wouldn't budge. The doll maker raised his hands. "You can leave, but only when you're ready to join us." The dolls moved closer, surrounding them, eyes hollow, smiles wide, the whispers turning into screams. Claire hugged Lily, sobbing. "I won't let you take her." The doll maker smiled. "Then you will suffer, as all who resist do." And the house seemed to breathe, the walls pulsating, alive with hundreds of dolls moving in synchrony. The music box tune warped into laughter, a laughter that filled the room, chilling, eternal. The first scratches appeared on the floor, tiny, precise, spelling out words. "One day you will play forever." Claire clutched Lily tightly, backing away as the dolls moved closer. The doll maker's voice echoed through the nursery. "She is mine, and now so are you." Then the room changed. The walls stretched upward, ceiling disappearing into darkness. The dolls multiplied. They came alive with terrible speed, climbing the walls, pouring from the floorboards. Their whispers became screams, voices overlapping in a horrifying symphony. Tom swung the rod at a group of dolls, smashing them into shards. But the shards turned into shadows, creeping back together into new dolls. The doll maker laughed, a sound like porcelain cracking, multiplied 100-fold. Claire realized something. The dolls weren't just alive, they were extensions of him. Destroy the dolls, and the doll maker felt it. Attack him directly, and the dolls would retaliate. He controlled them all. "Distract him," she yelled to Tom. "I'll grab Lily." Tom nodded, swinging the rod, smashing every doll in sight. The doll maker's form flickered, his smile twisting in anger. Claire lunged for Lily, snatching her into her arms. The doll maker raised his hand, and the dolls surged forward, moving faster than she could imagine. The floorboards cracked, ceiling tiles fell, and the walls seemed to close in. Claire ran, heart hammering, the child screaming, not in fear, but in that eerie, empty tone the doll-maker had put inside her. Finally, they reached a staircase leading to the attic. The dolls followed, dozens crawling up behind them. Claire slammed the attic door shut. It shook violently as the dolls pounded against it. In the attic, dusty sunlight filtered through broken windows. For a moment, it felt calm. But Claire knew it was an illusion. Lily's eyes flicked toward the window. "I want to go back, play with them." She hugged her tighter. "No, we're leaving. You're my daughter." Then a sound, porcelain scraping against wood. The doll-maker had found them. The attic door shook violently, almost splintering. Shadows crept along the walls. Claire realized they couldn't stay. They had to find a way out and destroy the doll-maker, or they would never leave alive. She looked around the attic. Boxes of old toys, broken furniture, and a large music box. Its lid was open. The tune it played was the same warped melody the dolls obeyed. Claire understood. Destroy the music box, cut off the source. Maybe, just maybe, they could stop him. Tom nodded. "On 3?" They nodded to each other. 1, 2, 3. They smashed the music box. The melody broke into shards of sound, shrieking through the attic, piercing the air. The dolls froze mid-motion. Lily fell to the floor, unconscious but safe. Downstairs, the doll-maker screamed, a horrible cracking sound that shook the house. "No, you cannot! They are mine! All of you are mine!" But with one final strike, the machinery collapsed, sparks flying. The dolls fell inert. Part 5. They emerged from the basement into the main hall. The house was quiet now, almost peaceful. Broken dolls lay scattered everywhere, shards of porcelain catching the weak sunlight. Lily stirred, opening her eyes. The hollow look was gone. "Mummy?" she whispered. "Yes, baby," Claire said, hugging her. "You're safe." Tom nodded toward the shattered dolls. "I think it's over, at least for now." Claire felt a pang of fear. She knew the doll-maker's curse wasn't completely gone. He had been powerful, embedded into the house itself. But the crystal, the source of his power, was destroyed. That meant the house was just a building again. As they prepared to leave, Claire noticed one small doll in the corner. It hadn't moved. Its eyes were fixed on her, and a faint smile was etched on its face. The signature at the bottom read, H. Dollmaker. She kicked it aside, trying to shake off the lingering dread. "It's over," she whispered. They exited the mansion, stepping onto the cracked stone path outside. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown gardens. The wind carried away the faint echo of the music box, leaving only silence. But Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't truly left. Part 6. Conclusion. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could after surviving such terror. Lily laughed and played. The Forest of Whispers. Part 1. Have you ever walked into a forest and felt like the trees were watching you. It started with a dare. 5 friends, Ethan, Mia, Jordan, Claire, and Alex, decided to camp in the forest outside their town. Locals called it the Whispering Woods, and old legends said anyone who entered at night never returned the same, or didn't return at all. Ghost stories, Ethan scoffed as they hiked along the narrow trail. It's just trees and wind. Mia, shivering slightly, adjusted her jacket. Yeah, but have you heard the whispers? People say the forest talks to you, and once it knows your name, it follows you. Jordan laughed. Come on, that's just old myths to keep kids from wandering around. It's fine. We're fine. The sun was setting as they set up camp in a clearing. A fire crackled, smoke curling into the pink sky. They roasted marshmallows, laughed, and shared stories. But as darkness fell, the forest grew quiet, too quiet. Alex noticed it first. Guys, it's really silent. No crickets, no owls, nothing. Mia's eyes darted toward the tree line. It's like the forest is holding its breath. Ethan shrugged. Relax, just your imagination. Nothing's out there. But then they heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper carried on the wind. Ethan, Ethan. He froze. Did you hear that? Yeah, Mia whispered. It's calling you. Jordan scoffed. Wind, that's all. Let's not freak out. But the whispers grew louder. Names, one after another, whispered in the dark. Claire's name, Alex's, even Jordan's. Claire, Alex, Jordan. They looked at each other, faces pale. The firelight flickered, shadows dancing along the trees. From the darkness beyond the fire, movement stirred, shapes slipping between the trunks, too quick, too silent to be human. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the woods. The beam caught nothing, then a flicker. A shadow darted behind a tree. Another appeared behind the bushes. Mia clutched Ethan's arm. We need to leave, now. Jordan tried to lighten the mood. Relax, we're just spooked. Nothing's... He didn't finish. A whisper directly in his ear. Jordan, come closer. He spun around, no one there. The trees loomed, massive, dark, and unyielding. The whisper came again, clearer, insistent. Jordan, come closer, forever. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift. The path they had followed disappeared, replaced by thick underbrush and towering shadows. Every direction looked the same, endless trees blending together. Panic set in. Claire shouted, Which way is the trail? No one answered. Then they heard footsteps, not their own, light and rapid, crunching leaves, but coming from all around them. The whispers multiplied, voices overlapping, calling their names in mocking tones. Alex turned toward the sound, shining his flashlight. In the beam, dozens of figures appeared, shapes made of shadow, faceless, moving unnaturally between the trees. They weren't running, they were gliding, watching, waiting. Run! Ethan yelled. They bolted through the trees, branches slapping against their faces, roots tripping them, but the shadows followed, never catching up, but always present, always watching. Eventually, they stumbled into a small clearing. In the center stood a decrepit cabin, its walls rotting, windows boarded, smoke curling from a broken chimney. "Shelter," Jordan gasped. Maybe we can hide in there." They ran inside, slamming the door behind them. The whispers didn't stop. They seemed louder, echoing around the cabin, seeping through the cracks in the walls. Alex shone his flashlight around. The